Welcome to the Darkstream. I'm Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com and unauthorized.tv. Welcome to the library. It's been a few days. I've been extremely busy with a couple things, as I'm sure you know, but we've tried to at least keep things rolling on the blog and on Social Galactic and so forth. Some of you may have noted that we got the new Hypergamos up today, and also yesterday was the new Forge of Tolkien, Tom Bombadil, which was good, and so everything is proceeding well, and I haven't paid any attention whatsoever to the debacle that is the Democratic National Convention. I only say that it's a debacle because I assume it is. I could be wrong. But when you look at what the Democrats are doing and the way that they've put forward Biden and Harris, two of their least electable potential nominees, it was really astonishing to see that they did that. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I anticipate that it will be a Trump slide. Of course, I've been anticipating that for pretty much since the day after the 2016 election. And certainly Biden and Harris very much fit the bill for a pair of sacrificial lambs. Now, obviously, there are people who are skeptical that President Trump is going to deliver on anything of any significance. I just banned somebody there who was intent on promising various black pills and so forth. First of all, this is not your house. I don't appreciate it when people attempt to hijack the mic, as it were, and so I'm just not interested in permitting people to play with that. But if you look at what he's done, he has actually been, despite his various flaws, despite his various weaknesses, he has been the best U.S. president since Andrew Jackson. No question. Yes, you can list a number of flaws. You can list a number of issues. Certainly I would have preferred for him to do more on immigration. Certainly I would have preferred to see him do considerably more on everything from foreign aid, and I'd prefer to see him defend gun rights more aggressively. But if you look at what both he has done and what he hasn't done, it's very clear that he is much, much better than Ronald Reagan was. You can't even compare Trump to either of the Bushes, to Gerald Ford. Richard Nixon took the U.S. off the gold standard and opened up China. How's that worked out? Not very well, right? And so this doesn't even get into what we're going to talk about here in a minute. This doesn't even get into all of his attempts to drain the swamp. Has he been, particularly successful at that? It doesn't appear that way, but, certainly there is a lot that's going on. I mean, I'm frustrated too that people like Hillary Clinton haven't been arrested yet. But there may well be a reason. Perhaps he can do more once he's reelected. Perhaps not. We don't know. But one thing that we do know about Trump is that he has thus far survived everything that they've been throwing at him, and they've been throwing everything at him for a reason, right? Welcome, Melanie. No, I don't think metaphor makes any sense. Somebody said maybe their prison is everyone knowing. No, that's not even the way Trump thinks. He's very, very literal. But you also have to keep in mind that it's a little bit difficult to hold someone to a high standard of keeping their promises when they had absolutely no information on what the actual situation was until they got into office. And there's a saying that every newly elected president looks 10 years older the day after he gets his initial briefing. Zach, thank you so much, and I appreciate the money, but I appreciate the prayers even more. But let's hold the super chats until we get to that, until we get to later in the stream, just because it keeps things from getting too broken up. And so, if you look at the degree of difficulty that he's facing, that makes it very, very clear that he is even better than the best president since Andrew Jackson, because he's done all of these things and not done all of the things that he would have been expected to, like start however many wars. I mean, how many wars do you think that the United States would have been caught up in now if Hillary had been elected? How many wars do you think that the United States is going to get caught up in if Biden is elected? I was talking to a Dutch guy, a friend of mine, the other day, and he can't stand Trump, thinks he's a buffoon. He's very well misinformed by the European media. It's not his fault. That's people can only go by the information that they're presented. But he even had to admit that Trump is the first U.S. president in a long, long time who hasn't been starting wars. He's been avoiding wars despite tremendous pressure from people in his own administration, from people in his own party trying to do so. And so, that's funny. We're not talking about the lesser of two evils here. Okay? The president is not going to be the second coming of Jesus Christ. The president is not going to be a miracle worker. The president is not going to be the answer to all of your problems. And I understand not being a fan of Jared Kushner as an advisor. I have my doubts about him, and I also think that his very understandable civic nationalism is frustrating. It's annoying, but what else can you expect? Most of you, not even some of you, most of you who now consider yourselves nationalists were true blue civic nationalists as recently as 4 years ago. The Q stuff is very civic nationalist. That is a myth that Americans have been steeped in for well over 150 years, especially the post-1965 newcomers. And it's going to be very, very difficult for people to penetrate the lie, for them to see through it, especially when it happens to be against their self-perception. It's kind of funny because people get it when you're talking about anywhere else. People get it when they see the new Arab Party formed in Sweden. Well, by the civic nationalist standard, those Arabs are just as Swedish as any of the Viking descendants. By the civic nationalist standard, I'm way more Italian than all those new Americans who served in the U.S. military and became citizens after 7 or 8 or 10 years. And so but people don't seem to be able to apply it to the United States as well. C'est la vie. It's how it is. We just have to understand those things. We have to accept the reality of the possible. And Trump is never, he's never been a warrior. He's a negotiator. He's a master of the art of the possible. So that's why it was so interesting, I thought, when he made this statement today, when he was asked specifically about QAnon. And what he said was fascinating. He said, well, first the reporter asked him the question and said, QAnon believes you are secretly saving the world from this cult of pedophiles and cannibals. Are you behind that? And President Trump's answer was, is that supposed to be a bad thing? We are, actually. We are saving the world. Now, he did say some things after the fact that tended to indicate that his response was not necessarily literal and that he was riffing on the political campaign against the evil left and socialists and so forth. But it is, I think, potentially significant that he chose to give an answer that makes it very, very clear what side he's on. And the thing is, the more you look at history, the more you read history, the more you realize that this conspiracy of evil that Q is describing is nothing new. And it makes sense when you think about the way that the evil of man has a tendency to continue to repeat itself over and over and over again in different places at different times, but always in the same way. I've been reading The History of Florence by Niccolo Machiavelli recently, and one of the things that really struck me was how you had this small group of people who were very rich and simply refused to limit their behavior in any way, and were incessantly insisting upon engaging in wars with all of the various cities and powers around them, And we're constantly at violent odds with most of the people in Florence. Now, we're not talking in code here. We're talking about Florentines. They're all Italians, and yet these noble families genuinely believe themselves to be better and set apart from everyone else. And it wasn't just the Medici family. I mean, the Medicis came out on top in the end, but it was the Ricci, the Abruzzi. It was a whole collection of families. And when you look at the histories of Japan, and you look at the history of China, or you look at many different histories in Spain and so forth, you see the same type of behavior over and over and over again. My shield is right. Miles Mathis would call them the Phoenician Navy. And maybe that's true. I don't know. But the key thing is that whoever they are, whatever they are clearly caught up in the same type of trap, the same type of web. You see this over and over again today. You see these people with no talent, no intelligence. They fail again and again and again, and yet they are always elevated above everyone else and given opportunities that no one else is given. For example, if you look at, for me, the easy example, just because I was there at the beginning of his career, is someone like Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is not good at anything except talking fast. He's not a good writer. He's not a good speaker. He's not popular in his own right. When we were both on WorldNet Daily, I had access to the actual reader numbers. And Shapiro never, ever ranked in the top 15 authors. Joe Farrow was always number one. Pat Buchanan and Ann Coulter tended to, depending on the week, would be numbers 2 and 3. And I was number 4. This was absolutely normal. And so, and then I watched as Shapiro just continually failed upwards. It was kind of remarkable. And so, but that's just one example. You can find examples like this in literally every field. You can find examples like this in music, in publishing, in video games, everything. In fact, it's been postulated that this is one of the reasons why the standards are being lowered at all these elite schools and everything, because the current generation of the elite, the current generation of the nobility is so stupid that they can't even pass the tests. They can't even pass the standardized tests. Think about these politicians. Think about how many times people that you see that are famous politicians or have been given these awards and all this sort of thing. And then you look and you find out what their test scores were, or you look at how many times they had to take the bar, and it's really kind of remarkable once you see this pattern. Jordan Peterson is a great example of it. All these people are talking about how smart Jordan Peterson is. He's a professor at Harvard. He's got to be smart to be a professor at Harvard, right? Well, he didn't even score well enough on his standardized test scores to go to law school. Do you know how dumb you have to be to not get into law school? He's not getting, he's nowhere near even Mensa material. There's a great article today on the UNS review. It's an article by Ron Unz, and he's talking about his analysis of National Merit Scholars. Now, National Merit Scholars are a very good indication of intelligence because you have to be in the top half of 1%. I was a National Merit semifinalist. I was a National Merit finalist. Anyone who's a semifinalist, finalist, or scholar, it's all basically the same thing in terms of the test scores. And so, like for example, Hillary Clinton was National Merit. She actually is quite intelligent. Bill was not. Obama was not, and so forth. And so what's interesting is that if you look at the people who are going to the Ivy League schools, it's not the National Merit Scholars. And that's why they've gotten rid of the SAT. That's why they're getting rid of the PSAT. Dr. Azume says, will we be seeing Vox passing the bar in California? I guarantee you that I could pass the bar in California without studying for it. I actually looked at some of the questions, and it's not particularly difficult. But of course, you're not allowed to do that. That's part of the reason for all of this credentialism, because with credentialism, it's all about your ability to jump through hoops. That's what they want. They don't actually want genuine capability. They don't want genuine intelligence. It's a bit of a riding the tiger situation for them, because one of the problems that they're seeing, of course, is that when you have stupid people running things, everything falls apart. Everything breaks down. And so, William Bort says, I doubt you could pass the bar. One of my best friends is a lawyer. He's actually a very, very good lawyer. And he had no trouble passing the bar on his first shot, and I'm not terribly concerned about my ability to do that. But it doesn't matter. I'm not going to do it, because what would be the point? I have no interest in credentials. Credentials mean absolutely nothing. And so when you it is tough. It depends when and where. I mean, you're probably not aware that they've just dumbed it down again in California. That's what we were talking about specifically. I certainly wouldn't want to take it in Italy or do it in Italian. But we're well aside from the point. The point is that there's reason to believe that this grand conspiracy that Trump is fighting is an ancient one, and it's not a human one. It's basically, I mean, when they talk about a satanic conspiracy, that's literally what it is. It's the people who have chosen to worship the God of this world instead of the Creator God. It's the people who have chosen to take the ticket. It's the people who have chosen to take the deal that Jesus was offered. If you kneel down to the God of this world, he will give you what you want. And then eventually you will be thrown from the horse once you cease to be useful to him. And then, and then you're doomed. And so that's why I think it's so important. That's why you see people like Big Bear and I telling you, don't take the ticket. Don't take the easy way. Don't take don't sell your soul for wealth, for money, for fame, whatever else it is. It's not a good idea, and it's not a good deal. And think about this. Goethe wrote about this in Faust. There are glimmerings of the same concept going back all the way into Greek mythology. Do you think that that's an accident? Do you think that it's just a fairy tale? Has Trump partly sold his soul? No, I don't believe so. My belief, and of course this is just an opinion based on very, very little information, but my opinion is that Trump was offered to take the ticket. It's possible that that his father or his grandfather were a ticket taker. I mean, certainly there's a reason why he was in the position that he was. And he grew up in that milieu. He was being a playboy and being somebody who had plenty of personal weaknesses. He was someone who fit their profile. And so I think that he was offered the ticket. He saw a little bit of what was going on due to his association with Jeffrey Epstein. And I think that that's when he turned his back on it. I think that's when he decided that he actually needed to go the other way. That's when he recognized that good and evil were real and that you have to make a choice. I believe that good and evil are real because I have seen elements of evil. And I've also seen, works of supernatural good. And so when you see these things, once you see these things, you're forced to make a choice. There is a certain intoxicating thrill to giving into temptation, to giving into sin, to giving into evil. You all know what it's like. You've all done it. That sensation of crossing a line and the roller coaster ride, the thrilling roller coaster ride that follows. And I imagine that's what the initial stage of taking the ticket is probably like. It's probably very exciting. It's probably very thrilling. But all you have to do is look at the horrific condition of the very most successful people in order to understand that it's not going to be worth it. Think about it. Would you trade your life for Tom Hanks? Would you trade your life for Steven Spielberg's? I wouldn't. I wouldn't want anything to do with it. Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I have a pretty good life. It's a little different than the life that I expected back when I was in my middle 20s and my family was very wealthy and everything seemed to be just coming up roses everywhere we looked, everything we did. And that all pretty much came to a screeching halt for a while. But you know what? It's fine. I talked to my dad just the other day, and he's as happy now as he was when he was a rich CEO and company founder. And so happiness and joy don't come from worldly success. They don't come from the things that the world values. I'm not saying that they're bad or awful. For me, I love that I can afford to buy the books that I like to read. I actually haven't bought any books in well over a year because I don't have anywhere to put them. But it's nice. It's nice that I can. I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that those things are intrinsically bad or unenjoyable, but the point is that it's not worth giving up your soul, giving up your joy, giving up your connection to God, giving up your connection to humanity, to turn yourself into a godless servitor of evil just so you can star in a movie or three. The Freedom Club says, were you offered the ticket, Vox? I don't, well, yes. Maybe not like a particularly massive ticket per se, but it's not like a bunch of people coming to you and saying, here's the ticket. If you will sign on this line, then you can have this or that. It's more like when you go to a party and you meet a guy who's a drug dealer and he offers you a hit of something for free. It's just a series of little tests to see if you're going to go along with it. And I'm pretty sure I failed the first few tests because I was a pretty relentless hedonist. But once things started to get a little bit more serious, at one point there was some relatively significant political figures were talking about prepping me to become a congressional candidate. So, which is kind of interesting in light of Laura Loomer managing to get herself in a good position to enter Congress. But what was interesting to me, and I didn't get it at the time, was when it was suggested to me, I laughed and I said, there's no way I have way too many skeletons in my closet to possibly become a political figure. And I remember being very puzzled at the time when this very significant national political figure said, "Oh, that's not a problem." Now, of course, I understand that that's actually something that they want. Mm-hmm. The more compromised you are, the more dark secrets that you have, and the worse they are, the better a candidate that makes you in their mind. And so, the more skeletons, the better. And so, now, for me, it was mostly fortuitous. I just had no interest in that. I never had any interest in having any sort of power over anybody else. And so that's why it was very important that the reporter talked about this conspiracy of pedophiles and cannibals and stuff, because that's probably, to a certain extent, literally true. So the more that you compromise yourself, the more completely you sell yourself into bondage, because sin is bondage. I mean, it's kind of crazy because you start out picking up on this stuff, seeing signs of this stuff, and you don't really think anything of it. It starts to make sense, and you see these patterns and stuff. But then it becomes a certain point in time when you suddenly see that it's all laid out in the Bible. It's all laid out in the New Testament. You can see the whole thing, and that's what it all comes back to. And all you need to know as to which side they're on is talk to them about Jesus Christ, because that truly is the one name, the one thing that they cannot bear. Today I had someone, I put up an email from some readers who were saying, well, we're concerned that you're getting a little bit anti-Semitic. And my response is very simple. It's the same as it always is. I'm not at all anti-Semitic. I am completely anti-satanic. And if you are confusing anti-Satanism with anti-Semitism, then I think that you really, really, really need to look at what your own logic suggests. And so, there's a reason why they talk about Jesus Christ of Nazareth being the name above all names and so forth. 2,000 years later, and the wicked still can't stand it. They just cannot stand it. Dr. Zuma says, is there death-like reaction to mentioning Jesus Christ one of the greatest indications that Christianity is true? Well, I don't think it's one of the greatest indications, but I do think that it's a suggestion. It's an indication. For me, the greatest indication is the transformative power that Christianity has. If you really want to stir things up, just point out about, just ask the question, what did Jesus mean by the synagogue of Satan? Anyhow, So, all right, well, I'll go ahead and take some questions and super chats now if you want to go ahead and fire them off. I think we've got about 15 minutes. So, but I'm inspired by the president's words, and I hope you are too. You should be. We know that he is on the right side. Erroneous Maximus sends that funny good job animation. Blue Collar Dave says, overcoming the Hal Lindsey heresy with friends and family is my biggest hurdle. Don't worry about that stuff. Focus on good and evil. One of the most useful things that you can do if you want to understand both the world and the truth of Christianity is just write down a few of the few key phrases. What is the God of this world? What is the synagogue of Satan? Once you start paying attention to those things, it becomes hard not to understand it. It becomes hard not to see it. So, do you think the left will push for the secession of the West Coast when Trump wins? No, of course not. They're parasites. Parasites never voluntarily leave the host. I don't think that she used the H word. I don't think that she would have gone that far. Yeah, stop repeating things, guys. If you're going to repeat things, you're just going to end up getting yourself nuked by the moderators. Grime Knight says, thanks for all that you do, VD. Appreciate it. Thank you, Grime Knight. What should we do to prepare for the post-2024 world? Nationalism is growing. Nationalism is getting stronger. But it's going to be particularly bad in the places where the demographics are the most mixed. That's why people are already, fleeing California and stuff. I was talking to somebody just last night that wants to get out of California. And, we're not talking about somebody who, as far as I know, pays any attention to politics at all. Dr. Zume says, thank you for your writing and speech. You had one of the greatest impacts on how I view the world and have helped reframe my entire understanding of many things. I hope you don't ever stop. Well, we're all going to stop eventually, but at least on this earth, when we, go up to play the next level. But I do intend to stick around here for a long time. I have a lot of books that I want to get written, a lot of books that I intend to write. I'm fortunate in being in excellent health, and I enjoy what I do. A lot of times people say, how can you do all these things and work on all these things? It's because I enjoy it. For me, there's very little difference between work and play. 88 SMJLS sends $4.99. Thank you. Drywall also sends $5. Sans question, so thank you too. Is there any chance at this point of the U.S. not breaking apart? No. It's definitely going to break apart, because that's what happens when once the demographic differences get too great. And remember, the U.S. has been the recipient of the largest invasion in human history. There's never, ever been an invasion this great. So, Foo says, corporate cancer looks to be an evergreen book for a while, unlike some authors whose books are irrelevant 6 months into a news cycle. Yeah, it's funny. Some people have told me that they actually think it's possibly the most useful business book ever written, which, my initial response was, that's absurd. And then I stopped and thought about like what we've seen over the past year. And then I thought they may actually have a case, which is a little ironic considering that I wrote the first 10,000 words of what is a very short book in about 3 days after Christmas 2 years ago. Baron von Blair says, thanks, Vox. You're welcome. Cyrus the Acceptable said, what's your favorite aspect of Andrew Jackson? Not the Trail of Tears. As an American Indian, that's not my favorite thing about Jackson, but obviously the way that he ended the charter of the Bank of the United States. That was integral to the success of the U.S. Joe C. is quite generous and says, thanks for the great analysis as always. Put this towards some extra book space, no ticket required. I appreciate that. By the way, I've got something to say too to the Castalia Library subscribers. I've still only got the one book, but for those of you who happen to subscribe through PayPal, the system does not let you renew those subscriptions. That's why you've been dropping off. And so you're going to be getting emails from Castalia Library, and there will be instructions on what you need to do. And so there's a bunch of people, probably like 50 people, that are affected by this. So anyhow, that's what's going on. We'll keep you posted. We're making good progress. I'll show you some pages from the Plutarch volume has been approved for printing. Divine Comedy's already been printed. We're waiting on Awaken the Nightland is actually being bound now. We're waiting on the Cowhides. Italy's on vacation. After being locked down for 3.5-4 months, the first thing they do is go on vacation. That's Italy. But we do have the order in for all the goat skins. And so I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to get the Libraria books 1, 3, and 4 all out by the end of September. They're all going to ship at the same time. So that's what's going on. Christopher McCullough says, is the inevitable nature of a country's elites to become antagonistic to the nation? No, it's not inevitable, except it does seem to be inevitable when the elite is an elite that is subject to the God of this world. I would love to do The Missionaries as a movie. That would be one of the funniest movies ever. Was Julian the Apostate a good Caesar? Julian the Apostate would have been a good Caesar if he hadn't been an apostate. The fact that he wasted his entire reign trying to fight Christianity in defense of noble paganism was, a futile mistake. How long will it take to get the actual election result? Dems will claim they won even when they lose. Of course, but it doesn't matter. Trump's president. He will continue to be president. The Castalia Library books are already going to Canada. They've been shipped this week. When will the meditations arrive? Are you talking about Library or library? Meditations Library has shipped weeks ago. Dr. Zume says, when you write on your blog for informative posts, are you attempting to write from the perspective of a Delta giving information? No, that has nothing to do with it. I just post whatever happens. I basically have a commitment to myself to post at least 3, preferably 4 times a day. So if I find something that looks reasonably interesting, I pop it up there. I'm not really in the, here's something that you should know. That's not really my style. Let's see. If Trump wins the popular vote, the Dems would be obliterated. In that case, what should we expect from the SJWs and other extreme leftists in response? Just like 2016, only much, much worse. You know, I don't think that, but they'll be frustrated and they'll be angry, but I don't think that there will be the shock that there was. They genuinely believed Hillary was going to win. I don't think that even the enthusiasts really believe that that Biden's going to win. Do you receive more money if I order books from Castalia House versus Amazon? Yeah, directly from Castalia House does better for us. But we're perfectly fine with going through Amazon. So, this man found out how to defeat the ADL on Patreon using this one weird trick. Yeah, the weird trick is to simply speak the truth and refuse to apologize for things that you shouldn't apologize for. You know, they're going to hate you, and you know that's that. Don't try to appease the enemy. I mean, they literally serve the devil. Why would you want their approval in the first place? Is there a yearly library subscription? We should actually do that. We currently we have permitted a few people to do that. If that's something, if you're interested in just paying for a whole year subscription ahead of time, shoot me an email. Actually, no. Shoot an email to library@castaliahouse.com and we'll hook you up. In fact, I think there's already like 2 people that are on the waiting list to do that. So, unless of course you're one of them, but we'll get that set up. So, on that note, that's all I've got. So, have a good evening. Pray for President Trump. You know, he's literally trying to save the world from evil. Oh, before I go, James Monroe says Grant B is pulling his daughter out of school. He shows the anti-white books on his Twitter. It's shocking. Don't be shocked. The public schools are pure evil. You know, I wrote about this in a column back in like 2002. This is not news. So, in any event, be strong, have faith, pray for your president, and I will see you at the next Darkstream. This is the Darkstream. I'm Voxday.